Well, thank you for staying with us. Nigeria's oil and gas sector is no doubt riddled with numerous challenges exacerbated by rising crude oil theft, pipeline vandalism, which has continued to hinder the developmental aspirations of a country that is heavily dependent on oil revenues to meet its needs. The development has, over time, led the country's inability to meet our crude oil production quota set by the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries amid soaring crude oil prices in international markets occasioned by the Russia and Ukraine crisis. Well, however, in a twist of fate, Nigeria reclaimed its status as the largest oil producer in Africa, with recent rebound in crude oil production, as the latest oil production data from OPEC shows that the country produced an average of about 1.35 million barrels per day and 1.23 million barrels of crude oil daily in December and November, respectively. The OPEC report further shows that Nigeria has also seen improved oil outputs for November 2022, a development that saw Angola and Algeria trail in second and third positions, respectively. I'm now being joined virtually by an energy analyst who is also a partner at Zara Advisory and Consulting, Mr. Joseph Nwakwe, also a past chairman of the Society of Petroleum Engineers and Nigerian chapter. Thank you so much. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Tolu. Thank you for having me.
All right. First, let me start with asking you what you think about our projection for our budget. We are looking at 1.69 million barrels per day at $75 per barrel. Some say this seems to be kind of ambitious. What do you think, considering what we have on ground at the moment?
Well, I think it's achievable. I will start by saying that I don't think it's overly ambitious. If you recognize that in 2021, that was kind of our average monthly output, about 1.6. That was our 2021 output. I mean, it stands to reason that with a little bit more of work, we'll be able to get back to that level. So I think it's achievable within the year.
NNPC seems to be back on track after becoming a limited liability company. A lot of work is going on trying to address pipeline vandalism and all of that. What is your reaction to that development, and how positive will you say it's going for the national oil company?
Well, I think the last couple of months, we've seen quite a lot of work being done to restore volumes, restore output to prior year levels. We're still some distance from where we were in 2020, and I keep saying that in 2020, we achieved the maximum of about 2.1 million barrels in some months, about 2 or 3 months in 2020. And we had an average of about 1.8 in 2020. If you think about where we are today and getting back to that level, it will require quite a bit of work, whether it's fixing pipelines, restoring wells that have gone offline, and all of that work. I'm glad NNPC at least is back up and is doing his bit to try to get us back to where we need to be.
But some are worried that it's not giving room for that kind of competition. The NNPC seems to be almost like still a regulator and also a player in the market. Yes, we know that some of these powers have been handed over, but they seem to be more favored than other companies operating along that space.
Well, we need to recognize that the PIA is not a light switch. You couldn't just move from a regime and then all of a sudden you get into the new regime. There has to be a transition period. And I believe we are still in transition. So yes, it looks pretty much like NNPC still has a dominant role in the market, and that's understandable. They do presently own majority of the assets in the industry. So it's not going to change overnight. But the important thing is that we have created the right framework, regulatory and otherwise, to move the industry forward. So I would say that it's not surprising that NNPC is still dominant. They have been for last 40 years. So it's gonna take some time before you really achieve a level playing ground for all operators.
We also see measures of some oil firms, international oil companies wanting to downsize operations in Nigeria by divesting. We saw that earlier sometime when it was, I think it was ExxonMobil and Seplat. That didn't work out at the end of the day. But today we are seeing Equinor's 20% stake at the Agbami field. Tell us about this. What is responsible for this development?
Okay, so there are very many drivers. So no two situations are the same. For Equinor, for instance, they've looked at their global asset portfolio, and it's a rationalization process for them. Remember that Agbami output has dropped significantly in the last couple of years. So they probably look at it and say, well, this is no longer worth our while. So that's the way I read that specific situation. And for ExxonMobil, is a different, again, it's a global asset rationalization for ExxonMobil. Remember, most of our assets, developed assets, are matured now. So it's in the normal order of things for those companies to look at that portfolio and say, well, it's probably time to divest and move on to more profitable assets. So it's not something that I think is out of order. It's just that we need to create a new stream of new green profitable assets to keep them. So you couldn't ask them to hang on to an asset that is 40 years old, as brown as it gets, without you have to feed the sector with new assets, new opportunities. That's the way to keep people. So my sense is everywhere in the world, the big IOCs will rationalize out assets that become brown and low profit, reduced profitability. They will have to move them on to smaller independents who can take them and make money out of them, because their cost of doing business is essentially much, much higher than that of the independents. So it's an economic decision, if you ask me.
Let me also ask you this question. What is your take with regards some analysts are saying that the federal government needs to take advantage of incorporated joint ventures model, that model will help raise more money, particularly around the upstream, looking at what we need to spend, even on our budget.
Yes, that issue has been ongoing for a while, and I think the primary driver is the JV. JV funding has been a problem in the last couple of years. We are unable to pay our share of the cash call, and that has essentially meant that there are very little activity going on in those assets. So it's still an ongoing thing. I think that everybody agrees that we need to find an alternative funding mechanism for the JV, and most people favor the incorporated JV model, and I think it's workable. We just need to move fast and implement.
All right, hold on now, Mr. Joe. Just give a minute, and we'll come back to this discussion. Let's take a break, and we'll be back to continue this discussion. Yes, we would also be connecting live pictures. We'll be getting live pictures from Anambra State, where the presidential rally of the All Progressive Congress will continue today. Yes, yesterday it was in Akwa Ibom State, and today they've moved to Anambra State to continue to spread the gospel of the All Progressive Congress ahead of the elections in a little bit above 3 weeks from now. So we'll be giving you those pictures, and the campaigns will continue, and we'll continue Business Nigeria on the other side. All right, thank you very much for staying with us. So I still have Mr. Joseph Onwankwe, and we're looking at the oil and gas industry. Yeah, before I go on, definitely, I'm going to ask this question that we still don't have filling stations wet. And that has been that discussion for some time. Yes, I see you smiling already, but I'm going to ask that question. There seems to be a lot of arguments from all quarters, from the major marketers and from the independent marketers and from the government's end and from even we, the users and motorists. Everyone has a story to tell with regards to this. I don't know, what is your reaction or what are you thinking? What is running through your mind around this? Are we going to continue like this until subsidy is removed? Probably by April or May. When are we expecting it? Or June to be removed?
Okay, well, sadly, we are still on this matter. I will address it this way. Scarcity or the problems we're having today assessing products is a symptom of a much bigger problem, right? It's a symptom of the challenges that the downstream sector is dealing with. And that primarily is underinvestment. So there has been pretty much very little investment coming into the downstream. And those who wrote the PIA duly recognize that, and they have made in the law, our law today says that sector needs to be deregulated to be able to attract the investment necessary and the players as well that can come in and revamp it. So I think, if you ask me, I think we need to go back to the disease. The disease is the fact that we have just not implemented what the law says and what we think will be a solution to the problem. We are looking at the symptoms. The first scarcities are just a symptom of a sick downstream. And that's the way I will address that.
So let's talk refining now. At least that's a little away from that. What are you thinking around efforts to revamp some of those old refineries? One of the presidential candidates is known as saying that he's going to sell it off or privatize it, whichever way it goes. But what do you think is happening with regards of the rehabilitation we expect to one of the refineries, and government still saying they are committed to making them work?
Yeah, and it's a piece of good news that they said, I think it's second quarter, that the Port Harcourt
refinery,
the new refinery will be streamed back up. And so I hope and I pray it works. But overall, I think we've started to see private sector activity around the refining space, and that's very good. And I believe that if we work hard on implementing faithfully the provisions of the PIA, that indeed we will attract a lot more players in that space. There's no reason why we shouldn't. So domestic refining is not just desirable, it's very important for our economic well-being. So I think that anything that can be done to resuscitate and refining, and not just for ourselves, we should refine for export. So as a crude producing nation, we should be a refining hub for Africa at least. So I look forward to that day when we will have enough refining capacity for all the crude that we produce. For me, that will be success. So that's my thought on that. I think whether it's government that brings it or private sector, we need refining. Now, there are concerns about who is doing it and all that, and there are valid reasons for that. Some people like me believe that the government-owned companies have not performed. So people are, genuinely worried that an NNPC or any government-owned entity running refineries might be a difficult call for us. But again, it's neither here nor there. We'll see. I think my understanding is that the people who provided the funds have extracted certain commitments on how it will be run and maintained. So hopefully that arrangement will work. So we'll wait and see.
So what is your outlook? I always like to wrap up on that note so that we project for the sector moving on. Well, not basically Nigeria, considering all of the global issues, global tensions, and all of the wars. What is your outlook for the market?
Well, I think the globally we are still dealing with the Russia-Ukraine problem, and that has had significant impact on the oil and gas industry. Um, Supply, especially for products, has been a problem. Diesel, gas, and all that. So, and you could see the pricing for gas, for diesel, and other products is it reflects that problem. So, I think that that problem might, linger for a while, and if that happens, the market will remain a bit turbulent. That's my take globally. How that affects other headwinds like energy transition, that is still ongoing. So there are quite a lot of headwinds that we are dealing with, both globally and domestically. But specifically to Nigeria, this is an election year, so a lot of us are hoping, and the good news is that all the front runners are private sector persons. So we think that either way, irrespective of who wins, there might not be a significant change in cost. But I hope that we will quicken up with implementing the law of the land, which is the PIA. We should accelerate implementation, and then we should address the funding issues that we see, especially in the JV. That is very important. If we did all of that, I think the industry will end the year in a better place.
All right, there. It's a good way to leave it. Thanks so much for joining us on the show, Mr. Joseph Nwankwe. He's a partner, Zera Advisory and Consulting. Thank you so much. Also, a past chairman of the Society of Petroleum Engineers and Nigerian chapter. Do enjoy the rest of your day. We appreciate this.